So my name is Minna Huotilainen. I work here at the Faculty of Educational Sciences at University of Helsinki, and my background is in neuroscience. So I've studied quite a while ago already, doing some basic neuroscience studies on auditory memory and learning and stuff like that. And now I'm applying this information to learning sciences and educational sciences. So first we need a definition of multitasking. It depends a little bit like which types of tasks you are running at the same time. If you are, for example, listening to a science podcast and walking at the same time, so that's kind of a good example of multitasking. Walking is like automatized behavior, and you just walk and your cognition is completely engaged in the listening task. But then if you have other types of tasks, for example, you are doing your math homework and at the same time you are browsing through your social media. So that kind of multitasking actually doesn't happen at all. But what happens is that you are doing one task for a while. Let's say that you do your math test and you realize that you don't really know how to calculate something. So then you jump to the social media and you start browsing that. And then you realize that, no, I was supposed to do my math, and then you jump back again. So what happens there is not multitasking, but it's jumping from one task to another. And that's very straining for the brain. It's very frustrating because, we know that we have to update our working memory from one task to another and then update it back to the previous task. And it takes a lot of cognitive effort. So it's time wasted because you didn't have to do that if you did your first task and finalized that first and then you moved over to the second one. But if you are jumping back and forth every time you jump from one task to another, you have to always update what is going on in your working memory and where did you leave the task and so on. And that takes a lot of resources. You should not multitask within tasks that require your full attention. But obviously you can benefit from multitasking when you have tasks like, for example, writing an essay and listening to a concerto from the recording. So there, listening to the music, it is a task for your brain, but it really does not require those language areas and those attentional focus areas to be used. So you can actually benefit from listening to music at the same time if it suits for you. So that kind of multitasking is something that we can all learn from, and also it can help us. We have a specific habit of using our attention. And if we are very much used to jumping from one thing to another, so that is like the basic way that we use our attention, and it's not a very beneficial way. We may have taught our brains to do that by reacting to everything in our environment. There are so many things happening. There's always, commercials available or news or some messages from our friends or something like that. And we have the feeling that they require our attention. So we jump to those topics and then we try to jump back to what we were planning to do. And the long-term goals are always difficult to reach because you would have to be able to attend to them for a long time, while this kind of short-term goals, like just giving a brief answer to your friend who is asking just one detail from you, it makes us feel really nice because I've accomplished something when I gave that answer. So here you have a long-term goal and a short-term goal fighting against each other, and very often the short-term goal is winning because it's so easy to get this nice feeling from accomplishing something, even though it's not very important, it's just a message or just browsing something. We have to teach our attention to be such that we actually can focus for a long time on a long-term goal. And this teaching process is hard. It means that we really have to engage ourselves in tasks that take a long time, for example, reading a book or finalizing an essay or something like that. If we don't do that, so then we will be just this, like fast rabbits jumping from one task to another. And if we do that a lot, it will become very difficult to focus and keep the attention focused for a long time. It is possible to improve your focus and practice monotasking, being involved in one task at a time. You can do that by becoming more conscious about those things that are interrupting you. So if it's your phone, you can switch the phone off, or you can take it to the next room or something like that. If it is your own thoughts, so that's also something to think about. Maybe you can write those thoughts down, or maybe you can do something about them and then come back to the original task again. It's also a good practice to be engaged in tasks that are slow. So for example, reading a book is a slow task, or learning to play a musical instrument, or baking, or whatever you find interesting to you, so that you can actually practice maintaining the focus in one thing at a time for an extended period of time. There's also the tomato method, where you are choosing yourself a period of time that you want to be engaged into a certain task. Oh, it's called Pomodoro method, I think. So it means that you choose, for example, 20 minutes, and you spend that time just focusing on the task at hand. So you are kind of promising yourself that after 20 minutes, if I am able to continue this task for such a long time, so then I can do all those social media browsing or whatever I'm interested in after the break. But I know that the break is coming soon, so I try to keep as focused as I can. And that's also a good way to practice your attentive skills. Yeah, stress has both short-term and long-term effects on the brain, and obviously the long-term effects have been studied in groups of people who have experienced some extreme stress. So these are people who have lived in the middle of the war zone, or people who have been experiencing some life events that have been extremely stressful. And if the stress has continued for decades, so then you can actually see the signs of the stress, not only in the brain activity, but also in the brain structure. So certain parts of the brain in the frontal lobe start shrinking. Now this sounds really, really bad, but it is something that happens also in aging. So you can see this extended or faster aging in those people who have experienced these extremely long periods of stress. Now, in normal life circumstances, it's very rare to experience that kind of extremely strong stress for such a long period of time. But still, we can see effects of stress in just the everyday life if we are stressed for a long time. So it is something that is affecting the way that our cognition is working, and the way that we can use our memory and our attention. So we become a little bit incapable of taking all those cognitive capacities into use when we are more stressed. And people usually notice that themselves. And again, that is increasing the stress level, because you notice that you see these signs of stress and you become even more stressed about those. So it is really a kind of a vicious circle. Yes, it's sometimes called eustress. So it means that it is kind of a positive form of stress. You feel so excited about something, and you want to emphasize that a lot in your life, and you want to put all your effort into it. So it is a positive thing, but it has some of the same consequences as negative stress. So for example, it makes your blood pressure go up, and it might make your pulse go up, and so on. So you are kind of experiencing these bodily signs of stress, but mentally you feel that you are in a flow state, or that you are very eager to participate in things and also to contribute to things. And that's a positive thing, because it makes us perform better. And it's a thin line between the positive and negative stress, because even negative stress, even being afraid of a performance, for example, or something like that, even that has positive consequences, because it can make us more active in that situation. So it is also a little bit a question of attitude. How do we see those signs of stress, and how do we interpret them? So that's also an important question. So the power of music is quite interesting, because brain researchers have studied the effects of music on people's brains and on people's well-being and recovery for quite some time. And what has been found is that just merely by listening to music, you can activate those brain areas that are responsible for the stress reactions and the recovery reactions. So putting on your favorite music is actually a very easy and fast way to affect your stress level. You can make yourself happy, you can make yourself engaged, and you can help yourself focus just by listening to a specific piece of music that is important to you. And also, if you want to calm yourself down, so you might also find music helpful in that. It could be very important for sleeping problems. If you feel anxious in the evening and you start thinking, oh, I must sleep now and I must catch sleep, and then you feel that it's even more difficult to catch sleep because you are anxious. So in that kind of situation, listening to calming music is also very helpful, and it's a very easy tip to try. So I think that it's worth practicing how to use music for the best benefit in your life, to help you succeed in your studies, but also to help you recover. When you're planning your perfect study day, so you should first of all try to think if you are a morning person or an evening person, or typically most people are something in between. So you should know what is the best time of day for you to do some demanding cognitive tasks. And then you should also know your attention span. Mm-hmm. So is it like 20 minutes or is it like 1 hour? Usually it's something between those two. So that helps you to plan the day, and you should always plan what you are going to study and how long time, and also what are your goals for your studies. And you should also plan breaks. It's really important to have breaks for snacks and lunch and so on, but it's also important to have breaks for physical activity. It doesn't mean that you have to go to the gym. That's a good idea to do that in the middle of your studies. But if you don't have time for that, so it might just mean that you take your cup of coffee and you go outside for a while and you move a little bit there and take a small walk and see the sunshine and get some fresh air, and then continue your studies after that. If you don't have breaks, so that's not a very efficient way of studying. You should always pay attention also to your body and how your body is feeling about this day. So if your body feels like moving, you should listen to that. And you should try to make your studies contain also some physical activities. So maybe there is an audio tape of the book that you can take with you and go for a walk, or maybe you can just have a break between your studying and just think about things for a while and take your dog out or something like that. So that will also be very helpful in structuring the day. And it's important that the day also has an ending. So when are you going to stop studying today, and when does your free time start? It's really important also. And mentally, it's good if you can make a difference between the periods of studying, the periods of free time. Practically, it could mean that you just simply close your laptop, put it in a bag, and then know that, okay, the rest of the day is for free time. When you are reading and when you are getting acquainted with completely new information, so you should feel a little bit curious about your topic. If you don't feel curious, so then I would take a step back and I would try to still go back to the description of the course, and I would try to understand why are we learning these things, and what is the goal of this learning, and why do they think that I should read all this, and what should I actually accomplish from reading all this. Those are really important questions, and I think that we should discuss them more also in classes, and we should understand why the information is important before we start to actually going through the information. It's an optimal way of learning when your head is full of questions and you want to get new information about the topic, and then you have the course material which is giving you the answers. So it's very easy to remember things like that compared to the situation that you just start reading and don't really know what information you are looking for or why it should be relevant. Yeah, brain plasticity means that the brain is like malleable, it's changing all the time, and these changes are in relation to what we do. So if you start doing something that you didn't do before, let's say that you start learning juggling balls, for example, so that is actually affecting your brain, both the brain dynamics and the way that the brain activity is composed when you try to do that new skill. But if you continue it long enough for several weeks every day practicing this new skill, so it will also change your brain structure. So it means that there is a specific brain area that is related to this difficult task that you didn't do before, and that brain area starts growing. So it becomes larger. This sounds a little bit funny, like, you know, like your muscles grow larger when you use them, but it's the same thing for the brain. It is really concretically growing from those brain areas that you are using. And it's a fight, you know, use it or lose it. if you don't use a skill for a long time, so it becomes weaker and weaker. And there is this fight of space, fight of resources in the brain, and those areas are then taken into doing some other tasks if you quit doing something. So that's why we should always be very, like, do many different kinds of things and be engaged in different types of activities and not do only one thing at a time. Yeah, brain recovery is really an interesting topic, because how does the brain recover? I think the answer is by doing something different than what was straining our brains. So if you become very tired of being amongst a lot of people and everybody is talking to you and you have to be very active and social all the time, so maybe your brain then needs to recover in loneliness. And maybe you are longing for a moment alone. But then the opposite is also true. If you have to study for a long time all by yourself and you are only indoors and you are just by yourself, so maybe your brain needs to recover amongst people and you need to meet people and enjoy their company and laugh with them and so on, and that would be the best recovery for your brain. So there is no one recipe for brain recovery, but usually it means that it's something embodied. So we do something with our bodies. It could be sports, but it could be also a simple thing like, you know, taking a walk or going gardening or baking or whatever you enjoy. And then usually it's also something positive. So there are emotions attached to it, and those are primarily positive emotions. And then usually it's also something that where you are active yourself. So it's not something that you have to react to, like people asking you questions or sending you emails or something like that, and then you are only reacting to other people's needs and wishes, but something that comes from within you, something where you are creative and you are doing things that are important to you. Group level studies show that the most efficient recovery is related to physical activity and artistic activity. So these are studies that where hundreds and hundreds of people participate, and then they look at what is the most effective way for them to recover. But it doesn't mean that the same thing works for everybody. So it's also a task for all of us to find the best way for us to recover as individuals. About the reversibility of extreme signs of stress in the brain, because it has been also studied how people recover from long-term stress. And what actually happens in the brain is that those changes, those structural changes that the stress has caused during the decades that these people have been stressed in their lives, they can be reversed. Not instantly, but during a recovery period when the person is sleeping well, not feeling so stressed, recovering well, maybe doing a little bit more physical activity, having also positive feelings and emotions and so on, for after a period of life like this. So you can see how those changes in the brain actually are reversed. So the brain is mending itself, it's helping itself to become a non-stressed person's brain. And that's what it means for the brain to be plastic. So some changes can occur, but then those also can be reversed by living a different lifestyle, living a lifestyle where you don't experience so much stress. Yeah, so there's a very fast way to recover, and that is a breathing exercise. It could take only like 60 seconds or 2 minutes or something like that after you've practiced the breathing exercise, so that you are an expert in that exercise. So then that will actually help you very quickly to recover fast. So I'm really recommending everybody to learn their favorite breathing exercise or body relaxation exercise that they can use in those situations where they suddenly notice that they are experiencing stress.